So you've probably seen it, right? The headlines, the talk online. It feels like everyone is getting diagnosed with ADHD. But is it a real epidemic, or is there something else going on here? Well, that's what we're going to dig into. We're going to unpack the science and figure out what's really behind these growing numbers.
And look, this isn't just a vibe or a feeling. The data actually backs it up. We are, for sure, seeing a record number of people being diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD.
So just how big are we talking? Well, get this. A recent U.S. government survey found that a full 11% of kids have gotten an ADHD diagnosis at some point. And that might not sound huge, but it's a pretty big jump from where it was back in 2003, which was around 8%.
And that, right there, is the million-dollar question. What is actually going on? Are we in some kind of overdiagnosis crisis? Or are we just finally getting better at spotting a condition that's been there all along?
Okay, so first things first, let's unpack those numbers. Because how we get them and what's really driving this surge, well, it tells a really fascinating story. All right, and here's where things get complicated. See that 11% number we mentioned? That comes from just asking parents, hey, has a doctor ever told you your kid has ADHD? But when scientists do these really rigorous, standardized tests on a big chunk of the population, the number they find, what they call the true prevalence, is actually closer to 5%. So right away, we know it's not as simple as more people have ADHD now.
So if the actual number of people with the condition isn't really changing that much, what gives? Why are diagnoses going up? Well, it turns out it's not just one thing. It's a whole mix of stuff. We're way better at spotting it now, especially in girls and women who were historically overlooked. The rule book for how you diagnose it has literally changed. Social media, has blown up the conversation around it. And let's be real, the constant demands of modern life might just be pushing more of us over the edge. Let's zoom in on those changing rules for a sec. So there's this handbook for doctors called the DSM. Think of it as the official guide. Back in '94, it said your symptoms had to show up before you were 7 years old. Fast forward to 2013, and they pushed that age up to 12. And for adults, they dropped the number of symptoms you needed from 6 down to 5. I mean, when you widen the net like that, you're just going to catch more fish, right? More people are going to qualify. But here's the absolute key. Just having some traits, like being a bit inattentive or hyperactive, that's not enough to get a diagnosis. The real decider, the line in the sand, is impairment. It's when those traits start to seriously mess with your life. We're talking about your school, your job, your relationships. And that's a judgment call. Deciding where that line is, that's a huge part of why the numbers are going up. And this whole idea of impairment really gets us to the heart of a massive debate in the ADHD community. Is it a disorder that needs to be fixed, or is it just a different way of being wired?
So on one side of this debate, you've got the neurodiversity movement. And this quote from biomedical engineer Jeff Karp just nails it. It's the school system that's disordered. It's not the kids. The thinking here is pretty simple. Maybe the problem isn't the brain itself, but the fact that the brain doesn't fit into the neat little boxes our world, like our schools and offices, has created.
But then, on the other side, you've got the medical perspective. People like clinician Jeremy Didier make a really important point. They say, look, it's great to talk about ADHD as a strength or a superpower, but we absolutely cannot downplay the very real, sometimes very serious problems it can cause when it's undiagnosed or not managed well. We're talking everything from struggling in school to a higher risk of getting into accidents. So that's the real challenge, isn't it? Finding a way to bring these two worlds together. How do we celebrate neurodiversity and see the strengths while also providing real, meaningful help for the parts that are genuinely difficult? Which, of course, leads us right into the next big topic, treatment. We hear a lot about medication and therapy, but what is the actual evidence, the hard data, say about what works?
And probably the first question on everyone's mind is about meds. With all these new diagnoses, are we just handing out stimulants like candy? Are they being overused?
Well, the answer here might actually surprise you. A huge review of studies found something pretty wild. They saw that, about 19% of diagnosed kids were taking medication. But, and this is the kicker, they estimated that around 70% of those kids could actually benefit from it. So what that suggests is that, at least for kids, medication might be underused, not overused. Okay, before we go further, I just want to quickly explain a term you'll hear in science, systematic review. This is like the holy grail of evidence. Instead of just looking at one single study, a systematic review gathers up all the high-quality research on a topic and puts it all together to find the most trustworthy answer. It's the big picture, not just one piece of the puzzle. So when one of these massive systematic reviews looked at treatments for adults with ADHD, the results were pretty darn clear. After about 12 weeks, both stimulant meds and non-stimulant meds were shown to be effective at reducing those core ADHD symptoms. And what about something like cognitive behavioral therapy? Well, for those core symptoms, the evidence was quite a bit weaker.
And we're not just talking about short-term focus here. The benefits seem to go way beyond that. There was this huge study in Sweden, we're talking almost 150,000 people, and it found that being on ADHD medication was linked to lower rates of some really serious stuff, like suicidal behavior, substance misuse, criminal convictions, and even car accidents.
So, okay, after all that, where does this leave us? It's a lot, I know. It's clear that the path forward for ADHD means wading through a ton of new information and, yeah, unfortunately, a ton of misinformation as well.
And if you want a perfect example of that challenge, look no further than TikTok. A recent study analyzed a bunch of TikTok videos about ADHD and found that more than half of them were misleading. Over 50%. And when that's where so many people are turning for answers, you can see how things get muddled really fast.
So I think if there's one big thing to take away from all this, it's that there is no one simple answer. The rise in ADHD diagnoses isn't just one thing. It's a whole bunch of things happening at once. We're more aware, the rules have changed, our world is more demanding. It's a perfect storm, really.
And all of this leaves us with a really big, fundamental question for the future. As we get smarter about neurodiversity, what's our goal going to be? Are we going to try and change our environments, our schools, our workplaces to better fit all kinds of different brains? Or are we going to keep asking brains to change to fit the environment? How we answer that question, well, that's going to shape the future for millions of people.